Today magazine. I'm Bob Bakert with Jazz Guitar Today magazine, and we're here with JoAnn Falletta, who is the musical director and conductor of the Buffalo Philharmonic. Is that a proper way to tell people who you are?
That's right.
I know
That's
you're
right.
the musical director, but I know you're also the conductor. And JoAnn has been there over 20 years, which is pretty amazing. And she just told me that she's not a jazz player and she doesn't play jazz. But that isn't what fascinates me about you. And I'll say that. What fascinates me about you is that guitar is not traditionally an orchestral instrument. It's kind of like Segovia, he made all of the, he made it happen, if you will. And he sort of legitimized the instrument as a concert, But you rarely, you always see the conductor as a violinist or he's a piano player or something like that. And I don't know of anybody else. I think there is another person out there that went from guitar into conducting. But I know in your degree, in your education, that you studied both classical guitar performance and conducting.
That's right. That's right.
So I thought that was, pretty fascinating, actually. So I think the thing that really, the thing that blows me away, number one, is the fact that you're a guitarist, and you rose to the ranks of a conductor of an internationally reputed orchestra. I mean, the Buffalo Philharmonic is one of the best. I mean, it's a great orchestra. And I'll tell you this before I let you speak, because this isn't about me, it's about you. When I see the video of you in the concert hall, I used to go there when I was a child at St. Benedict School in Edgartsville, New York.
Oh, so you remember Kleinhans?
Of course I do. I've been there many, many times as a child, and when I was at St. Benedict's, we would go once a year and hear the programs, for the kids. And I started going, in kindergarten?
Yeah.
That was more than a couple of years ago, anyway. So I saw that, and I got a really warm feeling in my heart for what was going on.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Bob. And I should say, first of all, I love jazz. I just felt intimidated talking to an expert when I don't know anything about it as, from the inside. But
we're not really going to talk about jazz, and I don't know that I qualify as an expert. I'm just a guy that has a magazine or, an online magazine, and I try real hard to shine a lot of light on what's going on out there. But then Beth Marlis, who is a woman who is very involved with Musicians Institute out in LA, just did a series for us with women in jazz. We'll speak about the female part of this, if you don't mind. I don't mean to be patronizing, but women as jazz educators. So there's 6 major programs around the country, probably more, that she just highlighted, including Sharon Ibsen, who I'm sure you're familiar with at Juilliard. She's in our magazine, even though she's not a jazz player. But the thing that was exciting to us is, we have been highlighting education programs around the country, North Texas and people like that. But also, in jazz, women are really involved. And I don't think they got any press at all. So from there, I was telling my sister, who lives in Buffalo, and she says, well, what about JoAnn? And I said, well, you know what? That's a great story. So I'm going to see if she's interested in it. And that's how I reached out to you. So how did a nice girl like you
get involved with the guitar?
Get involved with the guitar and then decide you wanted to be both a guitarist and a conductor. I mean, that part just absolutely blows my mind. So
well, it was very unusual, but it started with the guitar. My father loved the classical guitar. So on my 7th birthday, as a big surprise, he gave me a beautiful little classical guitar. And he had arranged for a lesson the next day. And that was the beginning. I mean, I fell in love with that guitar. I loved everything about it. I loved the way the strings felt. I loved the way the fragrance of the wood. I loved everything about the guitar. My first day, I spent the whole day playing the open strings up and down. So I fell in love with the guitar, and that was really my vehicle. But since my parents realized that music was, becoming a very important part of my life, we started to go to orchestra concerts. And around the age of 9 or 10, I listened to the orchestra in live concerts in Carnegie Hall many times because we lived in New York City. And I just thought, that's amazing. That is an amazing thing. And it's not unlike a guitar in that the guitar has it's kind of orchestral quality, you know, of being able to play harmonic structures and contrapuntal lines and the way an orchestra does. But the orchestra was expanded, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to somehow be in the middle of the orchestra. And it's funny, Bob, I wasn't thinking like I want to study the violin and play violin in the orchestra. I wanted to be somehow the person who enabled all of that to happen. You know, the person who, I don't know, set up the landscape where all of these incredible musicians played.
Right.
And I'd sit there in the hall, I'd hear symphonies, and I think that's unbelievable. So from then I wanted to be a double major. You know, I wasn't going to give up the guitar. And so I went to Mannes at the age of 18, Mannes College of Music. And really the reason for that, and I feel very lucky having gone to that great school, was they were one of the few conservatories who accepted guitar as a major at that time. Yeah, it's very changed now.
Yeah.
But then, you know, Segovia had made the guitar famous, but it hadn't reached all of the conservative music schools. You know, they said, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's not an orchestral instrument, so really maybe it shouldn't be in the conservatory. But Mannes did, and so I continued studying both for my 5 years there at Mannes, and then I went to Juilliard. Juilliard at that point didn't have Sharon Isbin. It didn't have a guitar major. It didn't, so I concentrated on conducting. But then it was very odd to think of a guitarist as a conductor, because frankly, a lot of our very conservative and old-fashioned people with those viewpoints didn't really acknowledge the guitar as an instrument, and they had no knowledge of it. I mean, they didn't realize how, first of all, how difficult it was, how nuanced and complex it was, and with the sound and the possibilities of the guitar. So now we understand that, I think, a lot more, that the guitar is a very profound instrument. But a lot of people thought, how can a guitarist become a conductor? And, you know, I just persisted and I kept studying. And I tell you, I think I am, on many levels, I am so glad that the guitar is my instrument and was my first instrument, because I think I learned a great deal about music from it. You know, the idea that the guitar is an accompanying instrument for a lot of what it does, is accompanying. You know, whether we're working with it, and I love to play chamber music. So whether I was accompanying a violin or working in a trio or accompanying a soprano, there was always that feeling of that you were the foundation of what that person was doing. And you had to listen in that way. You had to listen so carefully, watching the person breathe, watching them picking up the bow and being about to play. So that sense of accompanying has helped me tremendously in conducting. Not only when I have a pianist and I'm accompanying a pianist or a violinist, but in the orchestra, when different people are playing solos, I can watch them and I can think about them the same way I would from my accompanying experience. Mm-hmm. And even more, I've only realized this, you know, as I started to conduct more and more, the guitar, the classical guitar, in any case, doesn't have any power of sustaining. Mm-hmm. Like a harpsichord. Well, the guitar is, I think, richer, but the doesn't have. We don't sustain, but we are always creating the illusion of sustaining. Right. So we're always finding a way of making that phrase last and sing through, sort of by sleight of hand. I don't know, you know, just kind of imagining it and making it happen, and that made me focus all the time as the guitarist of the phrasing, you know, okay, where does this phrase go? Where does it end? Okay, 4 bars later, somehow I have to get that illusion of that arc from this note to 4 bars later. So I became obsessed with this idea of phrasing and structure because of the guitar, because I had to somehow show that in my playing. And I think all guitarists think about that, you know, think about connecting notes that you're not really connecting, but you are, you know, you're making some connection. And that's helped me in thinking of the phrasing in an orchestra and the structure of music. So I feel I learned so much, and I continue to learn so much from the guitar.
Well, that's a great answer. It's polyphonic and monophonic at the same time, which is the only other instrument that's popular as the piano that does.
Yeah, yeah.
Have, you know, the little lap piano. You know, I've got like 9 guitars like around me, but not one right here. One of them happens to be a nylon string, a classical guitar, and there is no sustain. You're right, and that does make it a challenge. But I find it. I thank you for that answer. I just find it amazing. You had all kinds of things going against you to do what you were doing. You first of all, a woman being a conductor. I mean, how many of those are out there in the world? When you started, you know, 20 years ago when you got your job at Buffalo Philharmonic, there wasn't a lot of that going on. And there certainly wasn't, just let's pull that aside. If you're a man and you're a guitar player and you're going to also be the conductor, I mean, you have that going against you as well. And you did both of those things, but just by the sheer power of your will and your magnetic charisma.
Well, in a way, it was just will. And I have to tell you that one of the lucky things for me is, as much as my parents loved music, they were not professional musicians. Right. So when I told them I wanted to be an orchestral conductor,
right,
they didn't really know. They didn't know what that involved. And certainly none of us had actually analyzed who were the women in the field. We hadn't thought about that. I only heard it when I went to Manus and told them I wanted to be a double major. And they said, well, yeah, you can be a guitar major, but conducting, orchestral conducting, there really aren't a lot of women who have pursued that career successfully. Right. Yeah. There's no role models for you, really. I mean, there were some women in the past, like Sarah Caldwell, right, or Eve Coelho was another one in New York, or Antonia Brico, right, but it wasn't common. It really wasn't common. So they, I think in a very gentle way, were trying to let me know that it was a situation where I had to understand this and understand that it was going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. But, you know, like most 18-year-olds, you know, that's not, I wasn't willing to give up. You know, I wanted to go for it.
Not to make your life even more challenging, but the Ken Fuchs piece that was, now that was you and the London Symphony and Ken Fuchs. And
yes.
That was a symphony that was written for electric guitar.
That's right.
And,
that's right.
And DJ Spar was the guitarist on that, who is he's a composer himself, and I think he's down in Richmond right now. But here's the thing that blows me away. Now, this is go one step further. He's not playing an electrified nylon string guitar or a classic. He's playing an honest to God rock and roll, I think it's a Paul Reed Smith electric guitar with pedals, you know, with effects pedals and all of that.
Yes.
You talk about sustain, that the sustain will come from there. So how in the world, I mean, so I guess somebody commissioned Ken to write it. I tried to do some research on that. And there you are with a rock and roll. I know that DJ is more than a rock and roll guitarist, but he's playing rock and roll.
He was. You know, it was amazing. I have to tell you, the London Symphony, listening to DJ play, you know, with the pedals and the effects.
Yeah.
It was very funny because, you know, in that big space that we were recording in, the effects seemed to be coming like from all corners of the room, and they're like looking like, what's that? You know, what's he doing? Because it was like sort of surround sound of this amazing kind of fabric of sound that they'd never worked with before. It was really magical.
Yeah.
And, you know, he is a rock guitarist. I mean, that's him. And he wasn't trying to be a Segovia-like guitarist. He was being himself. Right. And he's so fabulous. And the musicians loved him. I mean, they cheered at the end of this recording, but I saw them, you know, looking and smiling like they hadn't experienced that, being in the middle of that kind of sound.
Well, it's very interesting, you know, in the jazz world and the world that I live in, you know, there's very traditional bebop jazz and all of that, and they're typically playing large archtop carved guitars, unlike a viola or a cello, but you know, in between them. I know you know what they look like, and it's an amazing art form, and we've got some amazing players. But then there's what I call the newer school, and these guys aren't that young, to be honest with you, that play with more electric guitars with pedals, and they play with distortion, overdrive, and all the effects, if you will. And then there's the guys that play with the solid body instruments that are playing legato style. Now, I would name some names here, but at any rate, so there's three very distinct styles. And to see, I've seen other people bring in guest soloists, you know, to play with the orchestra. I mean, Yngwie Malmsteen from Sweden did it years and years ago. And Jeff Beck has done some of this kind of thing. These are names you may or may not know. But to have a piece commissioned for an electric guitar like this, and then to have it performed with using that spectrum and that tonality, is just, it was amazing, to be honest with you. And I'm glad to hear, and you guys got a Grammy for it.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. You know, and I think it did break through a kind of glass ceiling for the guitar, because you know, being on the stage with 100 musicians from the London Symphony, and these people are at the top of their of the musical world. You know, and,
excuse me, that's the London Symphony. You know,
that's right. And there's DJ, and he's
not Joey
and they're just cheering
Bagadonis.
for him. It was great. It was great, and it worked. It really worked.
And you enjoyed it.
I loved it.
Oh.
And Ken is terrific. I mean, Ken has such imagination, and Ken has a very great sense of color. And I think you needed that to get the kind of colors. He found out what DJ could do.
Right.
He investigated every possible kind of sound approach to the sound,
right,
and he utilized it. And it was really magic.
Well, the takeaway for us here at Jazz Guitar Today is that, you know, pedals are not necessarily a bad thing, and you know, used judiciously and correctly, and you know, to expand the palette is, you know, it can be fun, you know, and
yes,
that's the most extreme example of that I'm aware of, to play with the London Symphony, playing an actual structured symphony, if you will, as the electric guitar, not as a member of the ensemble or as a member of the orchestra, but as the soloist of that, and it was written for that instrument. That just blows me away, and I'm really happy about that. So I'm looking at some notes here, and you guys were just nominated for yet another Grammy.
We were. Buffalo Philharmonic and I were nominated for a piece we did by a composer named Richard Daniel Poor. Richard and I went to school together. We've known each other for a long time, and he wrote an amazing orchestra choral piece that is really stunning. And I'm very proud to have been a part of that.
I think that's tremendous. I really do. I watched it over the last week or so, since I knew we were going to be talking. I've tried to bring myself up to speed on you, and you know, and so I've watched a lot of videos and read a lot of your things. I saw that amazing piece of your 20th anniversary that was produced. Yeah. That was a tremendous salute to you and all of your accomplishments. And the city of Buffalo loves you.
Well, and you know too, from your background, that Buffalo is a very special place. You know,
it is.
It's a beautiful city. I mean, people laugh about it sometimes because they think it's like the Arctic Circle here, but as you know, it's not. It's not. It's a beautiful city and beautiful people here. So, and they love their orchestra. I have to say that when I came 20 years ago, that was one of the most enticing things about Buffalo. The fact that the people of Buffalo treasured this orchestra, and they had treasured them in some very bad times. I mean, Buffalo had lots of economic downturns. You know, it was a Rust Belt city. I don't think it is anymore.
I left there in '74.
Yeah, and so, you know, it was some tough times, but the city always cared about the orchestra and took care of it. And I'm proud of this orchestra because, you know, they weren't formed by a wealthy board or a very rich individual. They were a WPA orchestra, Works Progress Administration. So, they were formed in the Depression, literally to give people jobs and also to sort of play music for people who needed hope. So we always like to think of ourselves as a people's orchestra. That's what we were. We came from very humble beginnings, and this city and this region, Erie County and Western New York, loves the orchestra. So that's a good place to be.
Anybody that grew up in Buffalo that doesn't love Buffalo, even though a lot of them don't live there anymore.
Right.
Let me go back to music for just a minute. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but so you did a show with Mark O'Connor, and he's playing the violin. He's very, very well known and respected as a violinist, but he is equally as respected and known as a guitarist. He's one of the top flat pickers in was. I mean, he sort of did everything you can do in that field and decided he was going to, you know, pick up the violin and play.
Wow.
But
wow.
Have you ever heard him play guitar?
I've never heard him live play guitar. No, no.
Well,
I worked with him a lot playing the violin, but,
yeah.
but.
Well, if you check out his background, he played bluegrass, you know, with one of the top bluegrass groups ever. He literally is one of the very, very finest bluegrass guitar players that's ever lived.
Wow.
I mean, so next time you see him, say, I didn't know.
I'm going to ask him about that. Maybe he wants to do something with us on guitar, because he's come a few times on violin.
I mean, you know, he's a monster on the violin, obviously. And
incredible.
Incredible.
And an incredible composer. Incredible composer. I mean,
feel, sensibility, but he's also a guitarist. And since I thought you being a guitarist, you know, who's doubling as a conductor and a music director, you appreciate that he's a guitarist that morphed himself into what he's doing. So that you have that to talk
yeah,
about.
I'm glad to know that. Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add to this? I'm so honored that you agreed to talk with us today. And I just wanted to highlight, you know, you for several reasons. You know, having, again, being a conductor, a female conductor is one thing, and I don't want to get patronizing on that because, you know, that could get weird, I guess. But the fact that you're a guitarist was the one that really just blows me away, because I've been playing the guitar since before you were playing the guitar. I'm a little older than you.
But you know what? I mean, I'm very proud to be a guitarist, and
I know.
And
I love that about you.
I'm very proud about it, and you know, I as a conductor at the beginning of my career, I know there was some suspicion about, well, how much about music could a guitarist know? Oh, truly, that was this general feeling of, because people who don't know the guitar, yeah, they picture, you know, a guitarist who knows 3 chords and that's it. Right. So they can't imagine, you know, reading an orchestra score as a guitarist. And I was always very proud to say, yes, I'm a guitarist, because I love the instrument. And as you know, it's a lot more difficult than most people think.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not.
But people don't understand the subtlety and the complexity of playing the guitar.
Especially the way you're playing, which is, you know, classical guitar, because you have to manufacture everything. The last thing I was going to ask you about, and you're right, the last thing I was going to ask you about, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit out of sync, but this is better late than never, is your guitar competition.
Oh,
yes,
yes.
Talk a little bit about the guitar competition and what that means to those people that come and do that.
Yeah, we started this, well, just about 20 years ago in conjunction with our radio station, WNED, who happened to have Don Boswell, who's the guitarist himself and running it and loves guitar. And he was talking about actually the Van Cliburn piano competition and how important it was for pianists, and how we had nothing like that in the guitar world. I mean, we have solo guitar competitions, but we never had a concerto competition. Right. And I thought that, you know, if we did that, maybe we would encourage more orchestras to bring guitarists to play concertos with the classical orchestra. Right. So we started it. And, you know, Bob, we didn't know who would apply the first year. We had no idea. And we got so many applications, literally from all over the world.
Wow.
And we narrowed it down by listening to the tapes to 10.
Right.
The winner was Mark Sandilla, an incredible guitarist from Poland. Yeah. And every other year we've done this, and every other year the quality of guitarists is astonishing.
Right.
And it's from all over, from Russia, from Thailand, from South America, from Europe, from Canada. In fact, in all these years, we've never had an American winner. So we're waiting. We're waiting for, but it
You're
always
that guy, practice.
Yes, we want that to happen. But it's just astonishing about how beloved and how well guitar is being taught now. I mean, the sort of technical capacity of guitarists has exploded. And one thing that we love in Buffalo is that many of these people coming to the competition have not been in the States before.
Oh.
So it's their introduction to the United States. And I always think Buffalo is a beautiful introduction to the United States, because the kind of warm reception they have here, and welcome to Buffalo, and people taking them all over to see Niagara Falls or to have buffalo wings or whatever we do. The food. it's a good thing. I mean, we can show them what Americans are like, at least Americans in Buffalo.
That's tremendous. Well, listen, I want to thank you for talking with us today. And you know, anytime you've got something that you guys want to talk about, you know, please, you know, contact me. And it doesn't have to necessarily be jazz, because I mean, what you're doing is so. Here's the word cool. You know, it's just.
Well, thank you. It is.
And it really is. And I think that, you know, anything that we can do to support, you know, your efforts and the guitar and trying to, you know, all of that. It's been my lifelong instrument. It's my buddy. I play every day. I think I've only had 5 days off in 60 years.
That's great.
Playing.
That's your soul. That's your soul.
Now,
right?
It is. Now, it doesn't mean I'm a great guitar player. It means I've tried real hard. So that's all I'm saying.
That's what all of us do.
I was at Georgia State University studying jazz guitar. I was a voice major. I've tried real hard. I'm not saying I'm great, but I'm just saying I've tried real hard. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Great pleasure for me
to have you here, and I really, really appreciate it. All the best to you. 20 more years, if that's what you want. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, JoAnn.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.